Hello there, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm glad you're here. This video is designed to be a gentle companion to your evening. Something to help you slow down, get cozy, and let your thoughts drift somewhere calm and curious as you settle in for the night. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Whether you're tucked in beneath heavy blankets in a snowy corner of Canada, or lying beneath a quiet ceiling fan somewhere warm and humid in the southern hemisphere, it's lovely to have you here. And if you haven't already, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find this peaceful corner of the internet too. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much for being part of this little nighttime community. Now, tonight's topic is one that's fascinated scientists, philosophers, poets, and daydreamers for thousands of years: dreams. And yes, I know, it's slightly ironic to say this next part, but I do hope the video isn't so interesting that it keeps you awake. But if it does, well, at least you'll walk away with a few new facts bouncing around in your sleepy brain. We're about to float gently through the science of why we dream, how the brain spins stories in the dark, what those dreams might mean, and what they might be doing for us without our even knowing. So take a deep breath. Let your muscles relax. You're not expected to remember everything, or anything at all really. This is a quiet journey, and you're welcome to doze off at any point along the way. One quick note before we begin. While this video discusses topics related to sleep and mental health, it's intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not medical advice. Alright, let's begin. In this video, we'll gently explore what dreaming actually is, beginning with the science of sleep itself, how the brain cycles through its nightly stages, and where dreams most often take shape. We'll look at how different parts of the brain light up during dreaming, and how that unique activity might help us process emotions, sort memories, and even prepare for challenges we haven't faced yet. You'll hear about the major theories, some suggesting that dreams are psychological housekeeping, others arguing they serve evolutionary survival roles, and some that believe they're just the random static of a brain in maintenance mode. We'll also explore the stranger side of sleep, lucid dreams, where people become aware they're dreaming while still inside the dream itself. We'll spend time with nightmares, sleep disorders, and how stress or trauma can shape what we see behind closed eyes. You'll hear how animals seem to dream too, and how people across cultures and throughout history have made sense of the images they find in sleep. And finally, we'll touch on some of the latest research, technologies that are attempting, however roughly, to decode dream content, and what happens when people lose the ability to dream altogether. Throughout, we'll keep things grounded in research, with space for curiosity and wonder. This is a slow walk through the quiet workings of the sleeping mind. No rush, no pressure, just the soft unravelling of a question that's followed humanity for as long as we've had language to ask it. Now let's begin. What is a dream, technically? That question might sound straightforward, but even the word technically starts to feel a little wobbly once you dive in. Dreams are notoriously slippery. You know what one feels like. Strange, vivid, fleeting, sometimes profound. But defining one with scientific precision is like trying to bottle fog. Still, we can try. In the most basic sense, a dream is a series of images, emotions, thoughts, or sensations that occur involuntarily in the mind during sleep. Most dreaming happens during a particular stage known as rapid eye movement sleep, or REM for short. But dreams can show up in other stages too, just in different forms. REM dreams are usually the vivid, narrative-driven ones, the mental movies full of colour, motion, and bizarre plot twists. Non-REM dreams tend to be shorter, more fragmentary, and often more rooted in real-life experiences. Psychologically, dreams are a form of conscious experience that occurs while the body is unconscious. It's one of the few times the brain is active while the rest of you is essentially off duty. Neurologically, it's a storm of brain activity involving the limbic system, visual cortex, and a whole cast of regions working without the usual oversight from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles logic, self-awareness, and restraint. Which might explain why in a dream it seems completely reasonable to be flying through the grocery store on a cloud made of toast, searching for your childhood pet who can now speak Italian. There are many different types of dreams, and scientists have done their best to categorize them, though the borders between them can be quite fuzzy. Vivid dreams are the ones we tend to remember, the ones that feel intensely real, complete with visual details, emotions, and a sense of being there, even when there is a forest shaped like your primary school. Abstract dreams are more fragmented and symbolic. They might not follow any clear narrative and often leave behind only a trace of an image or an emotion. You might wake up with the vague feeling that you were trying to do something important, but what that something was remains forever out of reach. Abstract dreams can feel more like impressions than stories. Then there are recurring dreams. These often revisit the same theme, place, or scenario night after night, or at least from time to time throughout your life. Common recurring dreams include being chased, arriving late to something important, or discovering you've somehow forgotten to wear pants in public. Recurring dreams may be tied to ongoing stresses or unresolved issues, but they don't always come with a clear explanation. The brain, it seems, likes to revisit certain loops when it sleeps, like it's trying to sort something out or just stuck on repeat. And then we have lucid dreams. These are particularly fascinating. In a lucid dream, you become aware that you're dreaming while still inside the dream. Some people can even take partial control over what happens, like becoming the director of their own midnight movie. Lucid dreaming isn't common for everyone, but it can be trained to some extent. Certain reality checks during the day, such as looking at your hands or reading a line of text twice to see if it changes, can help increase the chances of achieving lucidity later on. Scientists believe that lucid dreaming involves a unique pattern of brain activity where parts of the prefrontal cortex momentarily wake up, giving you a strange kind of awareness while the rest of the brain remains deep in REM sleep. Speaking of REM sleep, it's the star of the dreaming world. REM stands for rapid eye movement, a phase of sleep named for the darting movements of the eyes beneath closed lids. This stage typically begins about 90 minutes after you fall asleep and occurs in cycles throughout the night. As the night goes on, REM periods get longer, meaning you tend to dream more vividly in the early morning hours. During REM, the brain is highly active, nearly as active as it is when you're awake, but the body is temporarily paralyzed, a condition known as REM atonia. This paralysis is a built-in safety feature, preventing you from physically acting out your dreams and accidentally karate chopping your nightstand. The combination of intense mental activity and physical stillness gives REM sleep its unique profile. Neurologically, several regions of the brain go into high gear during REM. The amygdala, which processes emotion, is especially active. That's part of why dreams often come with strong emotional tones, fear, joy, confusion, awe, sometimes all at once. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational thinking, is relatively quiet. This helps explain why dream logic is, well, not very logical. Your brain is throwing a midnight cinema marathon and forgot to invite logic to the party. Visual processing areas, particularly the occipital lobe, are also highly active during REM. This helps generate the rich, sometimes surreal imagery that makes dreams feel so lifelike. Meanwhile, memory-related structures like the hippocampus work behind the scenes, possibly blending recent memories with older ones, mixing in fragments from your day with distant echoes from years ago. Interestingly, while most dreams don't make much sense to our waking minds, the brain appears to be doing something purposeful behind the chaos. It's connecting ideas, testing out emotional responses, simulating scenarios, and perhaps even preparing you for future events. Whether you're dreaming about parallel universes or simply navigating a version of your office that's on a boat for some reason, the brain is still working, just without your conscious self at the wheel. Of course, not all dreaming is the same. Some nights are full of rich, detailed storylines. Other nights, you wake with only a vague impression that something happened while you slept. Sometimes you forget your dreams completely. That's normal. In fact, despite dreaming several times each night, most people remember very little. Dream recall depends on several factors: timing, emotional intensity, and even how you wake up. Being gently roused during REM makes it more likely you'll remember what you were dreaming about. Waking up abruptly or after non-REM sleep, the dream might fade before you even realize it was there. So while the technical definition of a dream is relatively simple, an experience that occurs during sleep, typically rich in imagery and emotion, the reality is far more nuanced. Dreams are shaped by your brain's biology, your life's experiences, and perhaps even your unique way of seeing the world. They're stitched together by memory, feeling, and imagination, all playing out on the quiet stage of sleep. And even if we can't always remember them or explain them fully, dreams remain one of the brain's most curious and captivating creations, a nightly mystery hidden in plain sight, running on a schedule we never consciously agreed to. And that's just the beginning. When you drift off to sleep at night, it might feel like your mind simply powers down and stays that way until morning. But in reality, sleep is far from still. It's a dynamic, cycling process that unfolds in carefully timed stages, each with its own rhythm, depth, and role. And your brain? It's conducting a complex performance behind the scenes, alternating between moments of deep restoration and bursts of vivid, inner theatre. It's less like flipping a switch and more like entering a dance, a kind of nightly brain ballet that gracefully moves through cycles of rest, repair, and dreaming. Sleep is generally divided into two main categories: non-REM sleep and REM sleep. Non-REM, or non-rapid eye movement sleep, comes first and includes 3 distinct stages. Then REM sleep arrives, where most of the dreaming happens. The body and brain cycle through these stages multiple times over the course of the night, roughly every 90 minutes, like a repeating loop. With each new cycle, the proportions shift. Deeper non-REM stages dominate early on, while REM takes the spotlight as morning approaches. Let's begin with non-REM stage 1. This is the lightest phase of sleep, the drowsy doorway between wakefulness and deeper rest. It usually lasts just a few minutes. You might still be partially aware of your surroundings, and it's in this stage that many people experience those sudden muscle jerks, or the sensation of falling, which can jolt you awake with a surprise twitch. Stage 1 is gentle, brief, and transitional, a kind of soft descent into the deeper realms of sleep. Stage 2 is where things get a little more settled. Your heart rate slows, your body temperature drops, and your brain begins to produce rhythmic bursts of electrical activity called sleep spindles and K-complexes. These odd names refer to short bursts of brainwaves that seem to help with memory consolidation and keeping you asleep even when there's a bit of noise or movement around you. You spend about half of your total sleep time in this stage, and while you're harder to wake than in stage 1, you're still not yet in the deepest part of sleep. That comes next, stage 3, also known as slow wave sleep or deep sleep. This is where the body really gets to work on physical repair. Your muscles relax completely, your breathing slows, and your brain waves shift into long, slow patterns called delta waves. This stage is believed to be essential for immune function, cell repair, and general physical recovery. It's also thought to play a role in memory storage and emotional regulation. If you're awakened during this stage, you'll likely feel groggy and disoriented. Your brain doesn't enjoy being pulled from its deepest rest. Then comes REM sleep, rapid eye movement. This is the stage where things get weird. Your eyes move quickly beneath closed lids, your brain becomes highly active, and your dreams, often vivid, colourful, and emotional, take shape. REM is sometimes called paradoxical sleep, because while your brain looks awake on an EEG scan, your body is effectively paralysed. This temporary paralysis, called REM atonia, prevents you from physically acting out your dreams. It's an elegant built-in safety feature, though admittedly an unsettling one when you really think about it. This dance through non-REM and REM repeats about 4 to 6 times per night, depending on how long you sleep. Each full cycle takes roughly 90 minutes, but the balance between stages shifts with each round. Early in the night, your cycles are weighted toward deeper non-REM sleep, especially stage 3. That's when the body focuses on physical repair, immune function, and restoring energy. Later in the night, particularly toward early morning, REM stages grow longer and more frequent. That's when the dreaming intensifies and becomes more complex. This shifting rhythm is beautifully timed. Your brain doesn't just alternate randomly between phases, it adjusts based on what your body and mind need. Early deep sleep helps with physical restoration and memory encoding. Later REM sleep appears to focus on processing emotions, integrating experiences, and letting the brain play out mental scenarios it might not have time for during the day. One of the most intriguing aspects of REM sleep is its internal activity. The brain behaves almost like it's awake. Blood flow increases, brain temperature rises slightly, and certain regions, particularly those involved in emotion and vision, become hyperactive. Yet the muscles go quiet. Only a few small twitches might escape. A finger shift, a flutter of the eyelids, perhaps a facial expression you're not even aware of. For the most part, though, the body is still. Dreaming happens in the mind's theatre, and your body stays respectfully seated. And then, once REM ends, the cycle begins again. Light sleep, deeper sleep, and back to REM. This continues, uninterrupted unless something disturbs it, such as a noise, a change in temperature, or a vivid dream that pushes you to the surface of consciousness. Interestingly, if you're deprived of REM sleep, perhaps by interrupted rest or certain medications, your brain will compensate by spending more time in REM the next night. This is called REM rebound, and it's one of the many signs that the dreaming stage of sleep is biologically important, even if we still don't fully understand why. It's worth noting that not everyone experiences these stages in exactly the same way. Age, health, stress, and sleep disorders can all influence the length and quality of each stage. Newborns, for instance, spend far more time in REM than adults, possibly because their brains are rapidly developing. Older adults often experience lighter sleep and less slow-wave sleep, and conditions like insomnia or sleep apnea can prevent the full sleep cycle from completing properly, leaving a person feeling unrefreshed even after hours in bed. The structure of the sleep cycle is a reminder that sleep is not passive. It's not the absence of wakefulness. It's an active, purposeful state that your brain moves through with precision and care. Each phase contributes to something, whether that's repairing your muscles, filing your memories, or spinning together the bizarre dreams that might make you laugh, cry, or question your sanity the next morning. You might think of the cycle as a kind of overnight routine your brain follows without asking your permission. A little bit of cleanup, some quiet reflection, a burst of creativity, and then back to rest. And while you're lying there, completely unaware, your brain is doing a rather remarkable job of keeping the whole thing running smoothly. This quiet choreography repeats every night, whether you remember it or not. The stages rise and fall, the brain wakes and dreams and repairs, and the body floats between stillness and scattered flickers of invisible motion, all while you sleep on, blissfully unaware that your mind is hard at work, performing its most intricate routine of the day. For as long as humans have been dreaming, we've been wondering why. Long before brain scans and sleep labs, people looked inward and upward, trying to understand the strange nightly visions that visited them, and in the absence of neuroscience, dreams became stories, divine whispers, omens and windows into the soul. It's a tale as old as thinking itself, a history woven from gods and symbols, from philosophers and psychologists, each one offering a new lens through which to view that peculiar world behind closed eyes. In ancient Egypt, dreams were considered sacred messages. They were believed to be a channel between the mortal and divine realms, a way for the gods to communicate directly with individuals. Egyptians had dream interpreters, priests and scholars who could decode these messages and offer guidance. They even had dream manuals with long lists of symbols and their supposed meanings. Dreaming of drinking beer, for instance, might mean something entirely different from dreaming of walking through water. These symbols weren't just poetic, they were practical. Dreams were taken seriously in court, in medicine, and in matters of state. If the pharaoh had a troubling dream, entire temples might be mobilized to interpret it. The ancient Greeks shared this reverence for dreams, but took it in slightly different directions. Dreams were still seen as messages, sometimes from the gods, sometimes from the dead, but they were also woven into philosophical thinking. Hippocrates and later Galen, two key figures in early medicine, suggested that dreams might reflect a person's physical health. If you dreamed of fire, maybe your body was too hot. If you dreamed of water, perhaps your internal balance was off. Meanwhile, philosophers like Aristotle took a more skeptical approach. He saw dreams as internal impressions, images stirred up by the body's sensory processes during sleep, rather than divine communication. Still, even he couldn't entirely explain why dreams could feel so vivid, or why they sometimes seemed to offer insight. In the temples of Asclepius, the Greek god of healing, people would lie down in a ritual called incubation, hoping to receive curative dreams. These dreams were believed to be healing in themselves, or to offer instructions for recovery. Medicine, mysticism, and sleep were often entwined in ways that modern science is only beginning to circle back to with a more measured curiosity. As history moved forward, the cultural interpretations of dreams branched into new territories. In the medieval Christian world, dreams were viewed with suspicion. They were thought to be distractions from spiritual focus, or worse, the work of demons. But this wasn't universal. Some religious traditions embraced dreams as a form of divine revelation. Biblical stories are filled with prophetic dreams. Joseph interprets the pharaoh's dreams of cows and grain. Angels appear in sleep to deliver messages. The dream world was never neutral. It was either holy or dangerous, never just ordinary. By the time the Enlightenment rolled around, the spiritual and symbolic understanding of dreams began to lose its foothold, at least in the academic world. The emphasis shifted toward reason, logic, and observable reality. Dreams were increasingly dismissed as nonsense, a side effect of digestion perhaps, or the restless wanderings of an idle mind. But the 19th century brought a shift, and with it, two towering figures who reintroduced dreams to the intellectual spotlight, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. Freud, an Austrian neurologist with a knack for bold theories, published The Interpretation of Dreams in the year 1899. In it, he proposed that dreams were not random or prophetic, but meaningful expressions of unconscious desires, especially the ones we don't like to admit we have. Freud saw dreams as wish fulfillment, that strange dream where you forget your shoes and end up in a tree during a wedding. To Freud, that was your subconscious acting out a repressed longing, likely tied to early childhood experiences. Every dream, in his view, was a puzzle of symbols, disguising our most forbidden impulses in ways that let them surface safely. He introduced concepts like manifest content, the actual dream narrative, and latent content, the hidden psychological meaning beneath it. In Freud's framework, a train might not just be a train, and a locked door might represent more than a locked door. To put it politely, his interpretations could be a bit enthusiastic. Let's just say that not everyone found his symbols equally convincing. Still, Freud's impact was enormous. He made dreams central to psychology, not just curiosities but tools for understanding the human mind. He gave people permission to look inward, to treat dreams not as random flickers, but as messages from the deepest parts of the self. Then came Jung, Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist who began as Freud's protégé. and eventually became his philosophical rival. Where Freud saw dreams as veiled expressions of desire, Jung saw them as messages from the unconscious that could guide personal growth. He believed the mind wasn't just shaped by personal experiences, but by something deeper, what he called the collective unconscious. According to Jung, we all carry within us universal symbols, archetypes, that appear in dreams regardless of culture or background. The wise old man, the shadow self, the mother, the hero, these figures he believed were shared across humanity, woven into our psyche like ancient blueprints. When they showed up in dreams, they weren't just leftovers from the day, they were signposts pointing towards something the dreamer needed to learn or face. Jung also emphasized the dreamer's participation. He encouraged people to engage with their dreams, explore their symbolism, and use them as a means of self-discovery. Dreams, for Jung, were less about hiding something shameful and more about revealing something essential. They were invitations to dialogue with the unconscious, not just puzzles to be solved. While Freud focused on what dreams were repressing, Jung asked what they were expressing, and while they diverged in theory, both men contributed immensely to the way we still think about dreams today. They opened the door for dream analysis to become a serious psychological practice, even if modern science approaches things a bit differently. Today, most neuroscientists look at dreams through the lens of biology, emotion, and cognitive function. But the legacy of Freud and Jung remains in popular culture, therapy, and even the quiet act of journaling your dreams. And long before them, the priests of Egypt, the philosophers of Greece, and the prophets of ancient texts were already asking the same question. What do our dreams mean? There's something deeply human about that impulse. We close our eyes, lose consciousness, and wake up with memories of things that never happened, yet somehow feel like they mattered. Whether we treat those experiences as symbols, stories, or synaptic fireworks, they carry weight. Dreams are part of how we navigate ourselves. Sometimes they reveal our fears, sometimes they echo our desires, and sometimes they don't make any sense at all, but they still leave us wondering. Across centuries and continents, people have looked into the dark spaces of the night and tried to find meaning in the flickers of the mind. It's a tradition that continues quietly every evening, behind every set of closed eyes. Perhaps we have always been searching for ourselves in our dreams, or maybe just reaching for something that feels a little larger, a little more mysterious than waking life allows. Either way, the fascination endures, and every dream, no matter how strange or fleeting, adds a brushstroke to humanity's ongoing portrait of the inner world. When you drift into REM sleep and your body goes still, your brain does something rather unexpected. It fires up. Activity levels shoot skyward, certain regions go into overdrive, and the inside of your head begins to light up like a strange little city, all while you lie quietly under the covers. It's one of sleep's great paradoxes. Your muscles are paralyzed, but your brain is anything but. In fact, REM sleep may be one of the most active states your brain experiences in a typical 24-hour cycle. Let's take a tour through the dreaming brain, starting with the star of the REM show, the limbic system. This is your brain's emotional command center, a collection of structures that help regulate feelings, instincts, and memories. During REM sleep, the limbic system becomes highly activated, particularly a little almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala is often described as the brain's fear and arousal center. It helps us detect threats, process strong emotions, and react quickly to the world around us. And in dreams, it doesn't just whisper, it shouts. That's part of the reason why dreams can feel so emotionally intense. You might wake up sweating after running from something that never existed, or crying from a dream so touching you half believe it was real. The amygdala doesn't really care that the events it's responding to aren't happening in the waking world. It treats dream scenarios with the same emotional seriousness as waking ones, which is why the emotional temperature of dreams can run so high, even if the logic behind them is shaky at best. While the limbic system and amygdala are lighting up, another region takes a bit of a nap, the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain responsible for higher-order thinking, reasoning, decision-making, planning, and impulse control. It's also deeply involved in self-awareness and logical thought. When you're awake, your prefrontal cortex acts like a sensible editor, helping you stay grounded, ask questions, and evaluate your actions. But during REM sleep, this editor quietly steps out for a coffee break. As a result, dreams don't follow the rules of waking logic. Time can bend, people morph into other people, and you can be simultaneously at school, in your childhood home, and orbiting Saturn, all without questioning it. You accept the impossible because the very part of your brain that would object is offline. It's not that the dream is fooling you, it's that the part of you that normally says, "Hang on a minute," simply isn't awake enough to speak up. Meanwhile, other regions of the brain are buzzing along quite happily. The visual cortex in the occipital lobe, which processes images, becomes highly active. This helps explain why dreams are often so visually rich, even if the details fade upon waking. Colours, shapes, movements, and faces flicker through the dreaming brain in rapid bursts, sometimes with startling clarity. You might not remember all of them, but during REM, it's as though your inner artist has full access to the canvas. There's also increased activity in the hippocampus, the region involved in memory formation and storage. This is where things get particularly interesting. The hippocampus seems to help blend fragments of recent experiences with older memories, creating a bizarre patchwork of imagery and narrative. It's not uncommon for something that happened during the day to show up in a dream, stitched together with scenes or people from years ago. This mashup might seem random, but researchers believe there's a method behind the madness. Your brain could be testing out ideas, solving problems, or rehearsing emotional responses. In fact, many scientists now think of dreaming as a kind of noisy but necessary brain rehearsal. During REM sleep, the brain may be simulating different scenarios, conflicts, challenges, emotional situations, and practicing how to handle them. This might help us build resilience, adapt to stress, or navigate social situations. Think of it as mental improv theatre. Your brain throws together a wild scene, fills it with strong emotions, and watches how you respond, all while keeping you safely tucked in bed. Some researchers call this the threat simulation theory. The idea is that dreaming evolved as a kind of survival training program. By experiencing danger in a safe space, your brain learns how to react more quickly in real life. That could explain why so many dreams involve being chased, lost, or in peril. You're not just having a weird night. You're, in theory, preparing for the unexpected. Whether it's a hungry predator or an awkward social gathering, your brain might be trying to get ahead of it. Another compelling theory is that dreaming helps with emotional processing. By reactivating emotional memories and replaying them in new combinations, the brain may be working through unresolved feelings or reshaping how we interpret past events. This could be one reason why people often dream more vividly during periods of stress or change. Your brain isn't ignoring your emotions, it's literally trying to make sense of them while you sleep. All this activity takes place in a fairly coordinated pattern. Brain scans show that REM sleep has a distinct signature, a mix of high-frequency brainwaves, similar to those seen during wakefulness, but without the same level of external awareness. In other words, the brain is awake internally, but cut off from the outside world. It's a sandbox for simulation, a space for the mind to move freely without physical consequences. But for all its complexity, dreaming isn't necessarily about deep symbolism or hidden truths. Sometimes a dream is just your brain taking out the recycling, clearing unused memories, reinforcing useful ones, and updating the mental operating system. It's not glamorous, but it's essential. And unlike your phone, the brain doesn't ask for permission to run its updates. It just puts you to sleep and gets to work. Of course, there's still plenty we don't know. The neuroscience of dreaming is a young field, and many questions remain open. Why do some people remember their dreams while others rarely do? Why do certain dream themes recur across cultures? What exactly makes REM sleep such fertile ground for imagination? The answers are unfolding slowly, as technology lets us peer more deeply into the sleeping brain. Functional MRI scans, EEG monitoring, and even early attempts to decode dream imagery are helping scientists inch closer to understanding the mechanics behind the mystery. But even now, what's clear is that dreaming isn't random noise. It's structured, patterned, and deeply tied to the architecture of the brain. It involves memory systems, emotional centers, visual processing hubs, and circuits that help us make meaning. And while dreams can be strange, dramatic, or downright ridiculous, they're also deeply human, an experience shaped by evolution, biology, and the quiet genius of the unconscious mind. So when your body finally relaxes, your breathing slows, and your eyes begin their quiet, twitching dance beneath your lids, remember that your brain isn't resting. It's rehearsing, it's reflecting, it's spinning stories in the dark, not because it has to, but because it's built to. And somewhere inside that vivid blur of memory, imagination, and emotion, it's quietly helping you face the world again tomorrow. Why do we dream? It's one of those questions that feels like it should have a neat, satisfying answer, like why the sky's blue or how a rainbow forms. But dreams are more elusive than that. They don't sit still under microscopes. They shift, blur, and disappear just when you think you've understood them. Still, over the years, scientists and psychologists have developed several compelling theories about why the brain engages in this strange nightly storytelling. And while none of them fully capture the mystery, each offers a fascinating piece of the puzzle. One of the most widely accepted ideas is that dreams help us process emotions. Sleep, and particularly REM sleep, seems to play a vital role in how we regulate feelings, especially the ones we don't get around to sorting out during the day. Emotional processing theory suggests that when we dream, we're essentially reliving emotional experiences in a safer, quieter context. The emotional weight remains, but the sharp edges are softened. A stressful interaction from the day might show up in your dreams in a disguised form. Different faces, different places, but with the same underlying tension. It's the brain's way of giving feelings space to stretch out and settle. Studies have shown that people who are deprived of REM sleep tend to be more emotionally reactive during the day. It's as though their emotional thermostat is thrown off. Meanwhile, brain scans show heightened activity in emotion processing areas like the amygdala and the anterior cingulate cortex during REM sleep. These areas light up while we dream, suggesting that our brains are actively revisiting emotional material, not to dwell on it, but perhaps to reframe it. Dreams could be the brain's version of talking things through with a trusted friend, minus the conversation. Another major theory is that dreaming helps with memory consolidation. The idea here is that the brain uses sleep to sift through the day's experiences, sorting what to keep, what to discard, and what to store for later. It's like a mental librarian quietly shelving books while the library is closed. Some researchers believe that REM sleep in particular plays a key role in connecting newly acquired information with older memories, helping the brain create a more integrated and efficient network of knowledge. This process doesn't always happen neatly. In dreams, memories are often scrambled, blended with unrelated content, or placed in surreal contexts. But that might be part of the magic. By reactivating and recombining different memory traces, the brain might discover new associations, make creative leaps, or simply strengthen what's important. The benefit isn't just in recall, it's in understanding, in fitting new pieces into the puzzle of your life. Think of it like your brain sweeping its mental floors while whispering bedtime stories. The dreams may be odd, but they're part of a quiet process that keeps the inner world tidy, functional, and ready for whatever tomorrow brings. Another intriguing theory is known as threat simulation. Proposed by cognitive neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo, this idea suggests that dreams evolved as a kind of virtual training ground. In our ancestral past, survival often depended on how well we could react to danger. Dreams, according to this theory, gave early humans a space to practice. In a dream, you could face a predator, run from a fire, or navigate an unfamiliar landscape, all without the real-life risks. Over generations, this built-in simulator may have offered a survival advantage. Even today, a surprising number of dreams involve being chased, lost, falling, or confronting something scary. These aren't random, they're scenarios in which quick thinking and instinct matter, and though we don't face many saber-toothed tigers anymore, our brains may still be using dreams to rehearse responses to perceived threats, whether physical, emotional, or social. The logic may be outdated, but the practice persists. Then there's the activation synthesis theory, which takes a very different approach. First proposed in the late 1970s by Alan Hobson and Robert McCarley, this theory suggests that dreams are essentially the brain's attempt to make sense of random neural activity. During REM sleep, the brainstem sends bursts of electrical signals to the cortex, the outer layer of the brain responsible for higher thinking. These signals are chaotic and spontaneous, not planned, not meaningful. But the cortex doesn't like noise, it prefers stories. So it tries to interpret these signals, weaving them into something coherent. According to this theory, dreams are what happen when the brain improvises narrative out of static. A face here, a location there, an emotion that doesn't quite match the scene, but somehow it all gets strung together. The result may not always make sense, but it satisfies the brain's need for continuity. Critics of this theory argue that it overlooks the emotional and memory-related aspects of dreaming, but it does explain why dreams can feel so surreal and disjointed. They're not carefully curated. They're stitched together on the fly, like your brain is flipping through channels, catching bits of dialogue, and trying to write a screenplay out of it. Still, not all theories paint dreams as passive products. Some researchers suggest that dreams are a kind of problem-solving in disguise. You may have heard stories of artists, scientists, or inventors who solved difficult problems in their sleep. The chemist Auguste Kekule famously described dreaming of a snake biting its own tail, which led him to discover the ring structure of benzene. Whether or not the story is fully true, it highlights an interesting possibility, that the brain, when freed from the constraints of waking logic, can make connections it might otherwise miss. In a dream, the usual filters are down. You're not worried about being right or polite or realistic. This opens the door to novel ideas and fresh perspectives. While not every dream is a breakthrough moment, many are just odd little dramas that vanish by breakfast. There is evidence that sleep, and REM sleep in particular, supports creative thinking and insight. Dreaming might not hand you the answers, but it could give your brain a less structured space in which to work things out. Of course, it's entirely possible that dreams serve multiple purposes. The brain doesn't always like to specialize. It tends to multitask, processing emotions, sorting memories, preparing for danger, and sometimes just playing. Dreams might be the byproduct of this busy work, or they might be the work itself. And while science is making progress, there's still no single theory that covers every aspect of dreaming. Each one offers a window, but the whole house remains a little mysterious. What's fascinating is how unified the experience of dreaming is, despite all the messy complexity underneath. Whether your dream is a replay of a real moment, a flight of imagination, or a surreal mishmash of symbols, your brain treats it as real while it's happening. The emotions feel authentic, the environment convincing. It's only upon waking that we start to question it. And even then, sometimes we're left with the lingering feeling that the dream meant something, even if we can't say what. Perhaps that's part of the beauty of dreams. They sit right at the intersection of science and story. They're grounded in biology, yet open to interpretation. They come from deep within, yet often feel like they arrive from elsewhere. And whether they're sorting your memories, soothing your worries, or just sweeping the floors, they're one of the brain's most fascinating and mysterious creations. In the end, asking why do we dream is like asking why we think, or feel, or imagine. It's a question with many answers, none of them complete, and all of them worth dreaming about. Dreams might seem like abstract theatre for the brain, but behind all the surreal landscapes and melting clocks, there's growing evidence that they serve a very real psychological function, one that has everything to do with how we handle emotions. More and more, researchers are beginning to see dreams as a kind of emotional housekeeping, a quiet, overnight therapy session that plays out while we sleep, sifting through our fears, conflicts, and unresolved feelings without our conscious involvement. It turns out sleep is not just for physical recovery, it's also deeply involved in emotional recovery. And while many parts of the sleep cycle contribute to mental health, REM sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreaming, seems to be particularly important for managing stress, regulating mood, and working through intense or difficult experiences. One of the most compelling clues that dreams help us process emotion is how often emotionally charged events show up in them. Think of how often you've had a dream after a stressful day, a breakup, a confrontation, or even just a nagging worry you couldn't shake. The specifics of the dream may not match the real-life situation exactly, but the emotional tone often does. You might find yourself lost in a strange city, taking an exam you never studied for, or arguing with someone who looks nothing like the person you're actually upset with. Dreams don't always deal in literal truths, but they seem to tap into the emotional landscape of your waking life and remix it into something symbolic, dramatic, and occasionally therapeutic. Researchers believe this process may be one of the brain's ways of regulating emotion. When we dream, particularly during REM sleep, the brain reactivates emotional memories but appears to do so in a context that reduces the intensity of the associated stress. It's like watching a replay of a troubling event, but with the volume turned down and the sharp edges softened. This gentle reprocessing allows the brain to file away emotional experiences in a more manageable form, leaving us better equipped to deal with them the next day. This theory is supported by studies showing that people who are deprived of REM sleep tend to be more emotionally reactive. They might be quicker to anger, more anxious, or more easily overwhelmed. In contrast, a good night's sleep, especially one with rich REM cycles, can leave you feeling calmer and more resilient. It's as if the brain, left to its own devices, uses dreams to give our emotions a tune-up. Of course, not all dreams are comforting. Trauma has a particularly intense relationship with dreaming. People who've experienced traumatic events often report vivid, disturbing dreams or nightmares that seem to replay the experience or echo its emotional content. In cases of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, these dreams can become chronic and deeply disruptive, sometimes reappearing night after night with little variation. What's happening here appears to be a breakdown in the usual emotional regulation process. Normally, the brain revisits emotional experiences during REM sleep and gradually reduces their impact. But in PTSD, the emotional memory remains raw and vivid, and the brain may struggle to desensitize it. Instead of healing, the dream becomes a loop, an endless replay that doesn't lead to resolution. The dream feels just as intense each time because the brain hasn't been able to fully process or recontextualize the experience. Interestingly, studies using brain imaging have shown that people with PTSD often have reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex during REM sleep, along with heightened activity in the amygdala. This pattern suggests that the emotional parts of the brain are still firing at full intensity, while the parts that help us regulate and understand those emotions are not. It's like watching a horror movie with no way to remind yourself it's just a film. Yet even here, dreams might still offer a path to healing. Therapies like imagery rehearsal therapy involve helping patients change the content of recurring nightmares while awake, rehearsing a modified version of the dream in which they have more control or a different outcome. Over time, this can reduce the intensity and frequency of the nightmare and restore a sense of agency over the experience. It's a reminder that while dreams may be spontaneous, they're not completely beyond our influence. Grief, too, leaves its mark on dreams. People who have lost a loved one often report dreaming about them, sometimes in distressing ways, sometimes as quiet, peaceful visitations. These dreams can be intense and emotional, but they also seem to play a role in helping people process the loss. They allow the dreamer to see the person again, to say things left unsaid, or to experience a sense of connection, even if only for a few moments. While not everyone finds these dreams comforting, many do. They can become part of the emotional journey of mourning, offering a space where the brain tries to make sense of absence and reshape it into something less painful. Recurring dreams often fall into the category of emotional processing as well. These are the dreams that show up again and again, sometimes for weeks, months, or even years. They often involve unresolved conflicts or persistent anxieties. You might repeatedly dream of being chased, or losing something important, or forgetting a major responsibility. While the details vary from person to person, the emotional thread tends to be consistent. These dreams may be your brain's way of spotlighting something that needs attention, a stressor you haven't addressed, a fear that hasn't been soothed, or a decision that remains unsettled. Importantly, not every emotional dream is a signal of distress. Sometimes they reflect growth. People who are navigating big life changes, starting a new job, ending a relationship, moving to a new place, often report more vivid or emotionally charged dreams. The brain may be rehearsing new roles, adjusting to new identities, or simply trying to integrate new experiences into the broader story of who we are. There's a quiet intelligence in the way dreams seem to meet us where we are emotionally. They don't ask permission, they don't follow rules, they just arrive night after night with their strange symbols and shifting narratives, gently nudging the psyche towards something like balance. Even the oddest dream might be doing something useful behind the scenes, reminding you of a feeling you've buried, helping you test a new emotional boundary, or offering a kind of closure you didn't know you needed. All of this speaks to the idea that dreams are not just noise, not just leftover brain static. They're active, meaningful processes that reflect the inner state of our emotional lives. While they may not always be comfortable, they're often doing something necessary, helping us carry the weight of experience, one strange story at a time. The next time you find yourself waking from a dream that felt too big, too confusing, or just too much, it might help to remember that your brain wasn't trying to unsettle you. It was trying to help. In its own quiet way, it was doing what it's always done, sorting, feeling, healing, and trying to leave you a little lighter than you were the night before. Sleep often feels like the most unproductive part of the day. You're unconscious, motionless, unaware of the world, and yet behind the scenes your brain is a flurry of invisible activity. One of its busiest departments during this time is memory processing. Every night your brain quietly pulls together everything you've learned, experienced, or even briefly noticed, and begins the slow, careful work of deciding what stays, what gets filed, and what gets tossed. It's like your mind becomes an overnight librarian, one with a knack for detail and absolutely no desire for recognition. At the heart of this memory organizing operation is REM, sleep. While all stages of sleep contribute to health and restoration, REM plays a special role in helping convert short-term memories into long-term ones. During this phase, your brain actively consolidates information, particularly emotional memories and procedural skills. It's not just reinforcing facts, but also connecting ideas and forming associations that might have gone unnoticed while you were awake. The part of the brain most closely tied to this process is the hippocampus. Named for its seahorse shape, the hippocampus acts as a sort of temporary holding space for new memories. During the day, it collects and stores information like a short-term USB drive. But while you sleep, especially during REM, it starts moving that information into more permanent storage across the brain. It decides what's worth keeping and begins integrating it into the vast network of what you already know. This is where dreams come in. While the hippocampus is doing its job, you may find yourself dreaming about events from the day, or about events that are oddly similar but slightly altered. You might dream of sitting in a classroom you haven't seen in years, or running late for an exam you never actually signed up for. Musicians often report dreaming of performing. Athletes dream of playing. It's not just stress, it's the brain rehearsing, refining and reinforcing neural pathways. In one study, participants who learned a virtual maze task during the day were more likely to perform better the next morning if they had reported dreaming about the maze during the night. The correlation wasn't perfect, but the pattern was clear. Those who dreamt about the task tended to improve. It's as if the brain had spent part of the night going over the material, running simulations and fine-tuning the skill while the person slept peacefully. Other research has shown similar effects with language learning, spatial memory, and even creative problem-solving. One particularly famous study asked participants to memorize pairs of words. Those who were allowed to nap and enter REM sleep remembered significantly more than those who stayed awake. And when asked about their dreams, many of the sleepers reported imagery or content related to the learning task. Even when the dreams seemed only distantly related, the brain appeared to be engaging with the material beneath the surface. Of course, the brain doesn't only work on newly learned facts, it also organizes emotional experiences, procedural skills, and sensory details. This is why musicians might dream of practicing pieces, not necessarily by replaying exact finger movements, but by engaging with the feel and flow of the performance. The dream isn't a recording, it's more like a remix, focused on the parts the brain finds most important to reinforce. And let's take a moment to appreciate the hippocampus. This little seahorse-shaped structure is a workhorse. It never asks for praise, it doesn't get a bonus or a lunch break. It works overtime for zero pay, and all it asks is that you occasionally give it a decent night's rest. When we sleep poorly, the hippocampus struggles, memory suffers, learning slows, and we may find ourselves feeling foggy or forgetful. It's no coincidence that a night of bad sleep makes studying feel like dragging a boat through sand. The brain hasn't had a chance to sort and solidify what you've been trying to learn. Sleep also helps us forget. That might sound counterintuitive, but it's crucial. Every day, your brain takes in a tremendous amount of sensory input, most of which isn't useful long-term. You don't need to remember every license plate you saw or every detail of a stranger's outfit, or exactly how many times your phone buzzed. Sleep helps filter out the irrelevant, making space for the meaningful. It's like tidying up a cluttered desktop so you can find the files you actually need. This is sometimes referred to as synaptic downscaling. The theory suggests that during sleep, especially deep non-REM and REM stages, the brain trims back weaker synaptic connections and strengthens the ones that matter. It's a bit like pruning a garden. Not everything grows, but what's left grows stronger and more efficiently. Interestingly, this process of forgetting is also thought to be adaptive. It keeps our memories from becoming overloaded and helps prevent us from being paralyzed by detail. If you remembered everything equally, you'd struggle to focus or make decisions. Prioritizing, editing, and selectively discarding information is part of what makes our minds flexible, and REM sleep plays a key role in that editing process. Another curious feature of sleep-related memory is the integration of new information into existing knowledge. This is where creativity comes into play. When your brain is dreaming, it doesn't just sort information, it connects it in unusual ways. You might wake up with a new perspective on a problem, or find that something you read the day before suddenly clicks the next morning. It's not magic. It's just a brain that's had time to work offline, away from the noise and distraction of the day. And while not all dreams are directly tied to memory processing, many are shaped by recent events. This is known as the day residue effect. Elements from your waking life showing up in your dreams. They might not appear exactly as they were, but they're there, woven into the fabric of the dream. Sometimes they're subtle, like the colour of a wall, a song you heard once, or the shadow of a feeling. The brain doesn't forget so much as it repurposes. The role of dreams in learning and memory continues to be an active area of research, and scientists are still unravelling the details. But the consensus is growing. Sleep, and especially REM sleep, isn't just restful, it's formative. It's when learning becomes knowing, when experience becomes understanding, and when fleeting moments become part of who you are. So the next time you wake up from a dream that feels like a jumbled collection of school hallways, musical performances, and forgotten passwords, consider what might be happening beneath the chaos. Your brain may have spent the night refining skills, reinforcing lessons, or gently letting go of what no longer serves you. It's working behind the curtain, storing what matters and tossing the rest into the recycling bin. And it's doing all of this quietly, efficiently, and without asking for much, just a warm blanket, a dark room, and a few uninterrupted hours to do its job. Not bad for an unpaid night shift. Dreams can be beautiful and surreal, flying over forests, walking through glowing cities, or speaking to people long gone, but they can also be downright terrifying. Being chased, falling, getting lost in an unfamiliar place, or facing some unknown danger. These kinds of dreams don't just rattle us, they're incredibly common across cultures and ages. Why, in a state meant for rest and recovery, does the brain so often choose to run horror movie reels? According to one influential theory, it's not just for dramatic flair, it might actually be for survival. This idea, known as the threat simulation theory, proposes that dreams evolved as a kind of built-in rehearsal tool, a mental simulator designed to help early humans navigate threats without the real-world risks. Think of it like virtual reality, long before computers existed. If your ancestors could mentally practice escaping predators, hiding from danger, or reacting to violent encounters while they slept, they'd be better prepared to survive those scenarios in real life. And those who dreamed well, those who simulated danger most vividly, may have been more likely to avoid it during the day. The theory was first proposed by Finnish cognitive neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo. He argued that because so many dreams revolve around negative or threatening situations, and because these dreams often activate motor and emotional systems without physical movement, they must serve an evolutionary function. In this view, dreams are not just psychological leftovers, they're practice drills. Consider how common certain dream themes are: being chased, falling from a height, showing up unprepared for something important, losing someone in a crowd. These aren't just random fears, they're deeply rooted survival concerns. Being pursued by a predator, misjudging a ledge, or getting separated from your group would have been very real and very dangerous situations for early humans. The brain may have evolved a way to simulate those events internally, preparing us for them just in case. Modern life doesn't typically involve outrunning saber-toothed cats, but our brains haven't fully updated the dream software. Instead, we dream of being chased by shadowy figures, or of failing in high-stakes scenarios that mimic the social threats of today, like being humiliated in public or losing control of an important situation. The content has shifted, but the underlying anxiety remains. Whether the threat is a snarling wolf or a disapproving boss, the emotional circuitry lights up all the same. Interestingly, threat simulation dreams often come with specific features that resemble real-world reactions. Your heart might race, you may feel fear or urgency, and the dream might be unusually vivid. Yet you're safe, tucked in bed, heart pounding, but unharmed. It's the perfect environment to practice high-stakes situations without real-world consequences. And because these dreams feel so intense, they may have a greater impact on learning. A dream that scares you is far more likely to be remembered than one in which you're quietly rearranging your sock drawer. Children, in particular, tend to have a higher frequency of threat-based dreams. Some researchers suggest this is a developmental feature, helping young minds simulate danger while their real-world experience is still limited. A child might dream of getting lost in a forest or chased by a monster, not because it actually happened, but because the brain is testing how it might respond if it did. Its imagination put to work as survival prep. But not every dream is a dire emergency. In fact, some dreams seem to combine emotional rehearsal with social or environmental learning. You might dream of getting into an argument, feeling embarrassment, or navigating a confusing situation. These dreams may reflect the brain practicing not just physical survival, but social survival as well. For humans, deeply social creatures, being accepted by a group has long been crucial to survival. Managing emotions, anticipating conflict, and interpreting social cues are all skills the dreaming brain might be refining behind the scenes. This idea leads into the broader concept of adaptive dreaming. Dreams in this context aren't just passive reflections, they're active simulations that help us sharpen mental tools. They offer low-stakes practice for high-stakes outcomes. Your dream self might not always behave perfectly, but even that can be useful. The brain is learning, experimenting, and reinforcing patterns. It's no coincidence that athletes often report mentally rehearsing performances in their sleep, or that people going through a breakup might dream about difficult conversations. The mind isn't avoiding the hard stuff, it's trying to get better at handling it. Even nightmares, as unpleasant as they can be, may have a purpose. While they can be distressing, they might also serve to identify and desensitize fears. By repeatedly encountering a threat in the safety of sleep, the brain may learn to reduce the emotional charge around it. Of course, this doesn't apply in all cases. Recurring nightmares related to trauma, for example, can be harmful and persistent. But in less extreme scenarios, even scary dreams might be the brain's way of nudging us towards psychological growth. One question that often comes up is whether people who dream more vividly about threats are better prepared to handle them in waking life. Some small studies have suggested a correlation between threat rehearsal in dreams and more effective responses to real-life challenges. However, proving this is difficult. Dreams are subjective, and it's nearly impossible to create controlled environments for comparing long-term outcomes. Still, the idea that dreams offer a kind of covert mental training remains compelling, especially given how consistent threat-based dream themes are across cultures and time periods. Evolution doesn't tend to preserve functions that serve no purpose. The fact that REM sleep has been conserved across species, from humans to birds to mammals like cats, and even certain reptiles, suggests that it offers meaningful advantages. And since REM is where most vivid dreaming happens, it stands to reason that dreams themselves might have adaptive value. Even in animals, there are signs of dreamlike behavior. Dogs twitch their paws, cats flick their whiskers, and rats tested in mazes show brain activity during sleep that mirrors their waking navigation. These observations hint that dreaming, or at least some form of mental rehearsal during sleep, might be a widespread biological feature, not just a human quirk. Of course, not every dream is about danger, and not every odd scenario is a survival drill. But when your brain dips into that dark, high-stakes territory, it may be doing more than just scaring you for fun. It might be preparing you, quietly, consistently, without any need for applause or conscious awareness, just part of its nightly job description. And let's be honest, it makes a certain kind of sense. When else can your brain simulate leaping across rooftops, escaping disaster, or handling impossible conversations, all while keeping your actual body safely frozen under a blanket? It's evolution's version of training wheels, wrapped in a narrative and filed under dream logic. So while your dreams may not always be pleasant, they may still be purposeful. Each monster chased, each edge you tumble from, each shadowy figure in pursuit could be part of your brain's quiet effort to keep you sharp, safe, and ready for what life might throw your way, even if it's just another Monday morning. Lucid dreams are one of the strangest and most fascinating quirks of human consciousness. In the middle of a dream, you suddenly realize, wait a minute, this isn't real, and just like that, the rules of the game shift. You're no longer a passive observer swept along by dream logic. You're aware, you're present, and in many cases you can influence what happens next. It's like waking up inside a dream without actually waking up, a dream where you know you're dreaming. The term lucid dreaming was first coined in the early 20th century, but the phenomenon itself is likely much older. People across cultures and time periods have described dreams in which they were aware of dreaming, and sometimes able to control their actions, the environment, or even the narrative itself. Today, lucid dreaming sits at the curious intersection of sleep science, psychology, and something that feels just a little bit magical. Lucid dreams tend to happen during REM sleep, the same stage where most vivid dreaming occurs, but in these rare cases, a flicker of self-awareness emerges within the sleeping mind. It's not full wakefulness, but it's not total immersion either. You might still be in the dream world, walking through a library on the moon, let's say, but you know it's a dream. And once you know, the possibilities widen. For some people, this moment of realization is fleeting. They become aware for a few seconds, then either wake up or slip back into regular dreaming. For others, lucidity can last minutes, or even longer, and in that time they may be able to fly, teleport, talk to dream characters, or explore surreal dream landscapes with full creative freedom. It's not guaranteed, and it's certainly not as crisp as waking life, but the sense of agency can be remarkably clear. The big question is, how does it happen? What flips that inner switch from dreaming to dream-aware? Neuroscientists have been studying this for years, and while the full picture isn't entirely clear, a few clues have emerged. One of the most important regions involved seems to be the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for critical thinking, self-reflection, and working memory. During regular REM sleep, this area is largely deactivated, which is part of why dream logic is so loose. You're not questioning why your childhood cat is suddenly the president or why gravity has taken the night off. But in lucid dreams, brain scans show a partial reactivation of the prefrontal cortex. It's not fully awake, but it's awake enough. That little spark of self-awareness returns, allowing you to recognize the dream state and sometimes interact with it more intentionally. It's like a dim light switching on in an otherwise dark room. Other regions, including the parietal lobes and areas involved in visual and motor processing, are also active during lucid dreaming. These support the sensation of movement, spatial awareness, and visual imagery that feels more vivid than typical dreams. In a way, the lucid dreaming brain is walking a tightrope, 1 foot in the dream world, 1 foot in conscious awareness, balancing delicately between sleep and waking. Lucid dreaming isn't especially common for most people. Surveys suggest that around half of all adults have experienced at least one lucid dream in their life, but only a small percentage have them regularly. That said, there are techniques designed to increase the chances of lucidity, and many dreamers actively train themselves to become more aware during sleep. One popular method is known as reality testing. This involves regularly asking yourself during the day, "Am I dreaming?" The idea is to build a habit of questioning your reality, so that eventually you'll ask the same question while dreaming. Since dreams often overlook small inconsistencies, a simple test, like trying to push your finger through your palm or reading the same sentence twice, can help trigger awareness. In a dream, your finger might go straight through, or the words might rearrange themselves. That's your cue. Another technique is called MILD, or mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. It involves repeating a phrase like, "I will know I'm dreaming," as you fall asleep. This intention setting primes the mind to recognize the dream state when it arrives. There's also WILD, wake-initiated lucid dreaming, where you try to remain conscious as your body falls asleep. This method requires focus and patience, but can lead to direct entry into a lucid dream from a waking state. Keeping a dream journal is also helpful. By writing down dreams as soon as you wake up, you train your brain to pay closer attention to dream details. Over time, patterns may emerge, recurring places, themes, or characters that act as mental signposts. Recognizing these in a dream can increase the likelihood of becoming lucid. Some people also experiment with sleep interruption techniques, waking up briefly in the middle of the night, staying awake for 10 to 20 minutes, then going back to bed can increase the chances of entering a lucid state. It's not always compatible with a peaceful night's sleep, but for those eager to explore their dream worlds more consciously, the trade-off may be worth it. Lucid dreaming isn't just fun, it has also been explored as a tool for emotional processing, problem-solving, and creativity. Some people use lucid dreams to confront fears, rewrite recurring nightmares, or rehearse real-life challenges in a safe mental space. Artists and writers have drawn inspiration from their lucid dreams, and some therapies are even beginning to incorporate dream awareness into trauma treatment, particularly for individuals dealing with anxiety or PTSD, but there are also ethical and psychological considerations to keep in mind. One concern is over-control. While the idea of shaping your dreams like a film director might sound appealing, there's a delicate balance between exploration and escapism. Some lucid dreamers report becoming so focused on controlling the dream world that they start to feel disconnected from waking reality. Others may use lucid dreams as a retreat from difficult emotions or life challenges, choosing fantasy over engagement. There's also the risk of sleep fragmentation. Techniques that require waking in the middle of the night or mentally checking in too often can disrupt natural sleep patterns. For people already dealing with insomnia or irregular sleep, lucid dream training may not be the best idea. Rest, after all, is the primary purpose of sleep. Psychologically, it's worth noting that not all dream content should be controlled. Dreams can serve important emotional and cognitive functions precisely because they aren't curated. They may surface difficult thoughts, offer symbolic insights, or bring forgotten memories back into awareness. Over-scripting them may reduce some of that organic processing. Then there's the issue of blurred boundaries. Lucid dreams can feel incredibly vivid, and some people find themselves questioning whether a memory came from a dream or waking life. This isn't dangerous for most people, but in rare cases, particularly for those prone to dissociation or psychosis, it can complicate mental clarity. Still, for many, lucid dreaming is a joyful, enriching, and often awe-inspiring experience. It's a chance to experience flight without physics, conversation without consequence, and creativity without limits. Whether you're gliding above cities, swimming through space, or simply walking through a dream landscape knowing you're dreaming, lucidity offers a peek into just how powerful and flexible the mind can be. At its heart, lucid dreaming is a reminder that consciousness isn't all or nothing. It's a spectrum, and sleep doesn't always mean lights out. Sometimes, a little spark of awareness lingers in the dark, and when it does, the dream becomes something more than a passive experience. It becomes a playground, a mirror, a question waiting to be explored, and every now and then, a story you get to write from the inside out. Most dreams are odd. Some are funny, and a few are downright lovely. But every now and then, your sleeping mind turns up the volume on fear. You wake with your heart racing, disoriented, trying to figure out if that thing you just experienced really happened. Nightmares are the darker corners of the dreaming world, and while they're unpleasant, they're not necessarily harmful. In fact, there's good reason to believe that even scary dreams are the brain trying to protect you. Let's start with some definitions, because not all frightening experiences in sleep are the same. Nightmares and night terrors are often used interchangeably in casual conversation, but they're actually quite different both in terms of how they play out and what they mean neurologically. Nightmares are vivid, disturbing dreams that typically occur during REM sleep, the stage most associated with intense story-like dreaming. These are the dreams that wake you up. You might remember every detail, being chased, falling, losing someone, or facing an overwhelming threat. The emotional tone is often fear, but can also include sadness, guilt, or helplessness. Importantly, you're usually fully alert once you wake, and you can recall what happened. It's a dream, but one that lingers a little too long. Night terrors, on the other hand, happen during non-REM sleep, usually within the first third of the night, and most commonly during deep sleep stages. Unlike nightmares, they don't usually contain detailed narratives. Instead, the person may sit up suddenly, scream, thrash, or show signs of panic. Eyes wide open, breathing fast, heart pounding. But they're not truly awake. In fact, they might not respond to voices or touch, and in the morning, they usually won't remember anything at all. Night terrors are more common in children than adults, and while they can look dramatic, they're generally harmless. The brain is essentially caught in a transition, partly awake, partly asleep, and very confused about which way it wants to go. In adults, night terrors can be associated with stress, trauma, sleep deprivation, or certain medications. They're not typically linked to underlying psychological disorders, though frequent episodes might warrant a conversation with a sleep specialist. Both nightmares and night terrors involve the brain's response to perceived threat, but they take different neurological routes. In nightmares, the dream content is emotionally rich and highly visual, which makes sense given that REM sleep activates the limbic system, especially the amygdala, the brain's fear center, as well as visual processing areas. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and regulation, is mostly off-duty. This imbalance creates the perfect storm for emotionally charged dreams with bizarre, sometimes terrifying scenarios. The brain doesn't make these dreams to punish you. It's doing what it does best, simulating danger, processing emotion, and reinforcing the mental pathways associated with survival. Even scary dreams are the brain trying to protect you. They may be rehearsals, emotional venting, or your brain's attempt to resolve stress that hasn't yet found an outlet in waking life. Evolutionary psychology offers a compelling lens for understanding this. From a survival standpoint, a brain that regularly simulates threats may be better prepared to face them. If our early ancestors dreamed of predators, ambushes, or environmental dangers, they might have developed faster reflexes or sharper instincts. These simulations, even while sleeping, could offer a subtle evolutionary advantage. That idea aligns with the threat simulation theory, which proposes that dreaming, especially of danger, is a built-in training system for the real world. That might explain why so many nightmares revolve around similar themes: being chased, falling, drowning, being lost or trapped, or losing someone we love. These scenarios all tap into core fears that have long-standing evolutionary roots. Falling from a height? That's a survival concern. Being chased? Absolutely. Getting lost in unfamiliar territory? Very dangerous if you're a tribal human without GPS. Nightmares can also mirror psychological distress. Stress, anxiety, and unresolved trauma are major drivers of nightmare frequency and intensity. People dealing with high levels of emotional strain often report more nightmares, and those coping with conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder may experience repeated dreams that replay the traumatic event or its emotional tone. These aren't just symbolic. They can be raw, vivid, and deeply unsettling. From a neurological perspective, this makes sense. Stress floods the body with cortisol and other hormones that affect brain activity, especially in the areas involved in emotional regulation and memory. If those emotions aren't fully processed during the day, the brain may revisit them during sleep, using dreams as a kind of emotional sandbox. Unfortunately, in cases of trauma, that sandbox can feel more like a minefield. But even here, there's potential for healing. Therapies like imagery, rehearsal therapy have shown promising results in helping people manage chronic nightmares. The idea is to rewrite the script of a recurring nightmare while awake, altering the ending or introducing comforting elements, and then mentally rehearse the new version before bed. Over time, this can reduce the frequency and severity of the nightmares. It doesn't erase the emotions, but it gives the brain a new blueprint, one that feels safer and more manageable. Nightmares can also play a role in grief. After losing a loved one, people often report dreams where that person appears, sometimes in distressing ways, sometimes as a comforting presence. These dreams, though emotionally intense, may be part of the brain's effort to integrate loss, to find a narrative for something that feels fundamentally out of order. They can be confusing, painful, even beautiful. And though they might leave you waking with tears, they are often doing emotional work that waking thought alone can't fully manage. Then there are the classic stress dreams, showing up late, being unprepared, forgetting something crucial. These don't always carry overt terror, but they can be deeply uncomfortable. They often reflect feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, or fear of failure. While they might seem annoying or exaggerated, they can actually be quite informative. These dreams often point to areas where you're pushing yourself hard, or where you feel vulnerable. They aren't judgments, they're reflections. And let's not forget the truly bizarre nightmares, the ones where you're trying to shout but nothing comes out, or where you're stuck in a looping corridor, or slowly turning into an appliance for no apparent reason. These dreams don't always have clear meanings, but their emotional tone, fear, helplessness, confusion, can still tell you something about your inner landscape. The imagery may be nonsense, but the feeling is very real. One important thing to remember is that having nightmares doesn't mean something is wrong with you. They're a normal part of the sleep experience, particularly during times of change, stress, or heightened emotion. They can be unsettling, but they're also part of the mind's attempt to process the overwhelming, the unknown, and the unspoken. If nightmares become frequent and start to interfere with sleep quality, mood, or daily function, they may point to deeper emotional or neurological concerns. But for most people, the occasional nightmare is just a temporary signal, a flare from the subconscious that something wants attention. Night terrors, too, are not signs of mental instability. They're a sleep phenomenon, rooted in how the brain transitions between stages. Most children outgrow them, and in adults they can often be managed by improving sleep hygiene, reducing stress, and avoiding known triggers like caffeine or sleep disruptions. In the quiet hours of the night when the body rests and the mind wanders, the brain doesn't stop working. It explores, remembers, simulates, and yes, sometimes it scares us. But even then, it's not working against us. Those intense heart-pounding dreams are just another part of the internal language the brain uses to make sense of the world and to keep us safe in it. And when the fear fades, when the sun rises and the dream slips into memory, you're left with the strange, humbling truth that even your scariest dreams are still your own mind, trying, in its clumsy, creative, and occasionally terrifying way to look out for you. Dreams can be strange, unnerving, or deeply personal, but they can also be profoundly creative. When the lights go out and your conscious mind steps aside, your brain doesn't simply power down. It wanders, it tinkers, it plays. And in doing so, it often stumbles into ideas, images, and connections that feel fresh, unusual, or even inspired. For centuries, artists, scientists, and inventors have credited dreams with helping them solve problems, compose music, create visual masterpieces, and crack scientific puzzles that had eluded them during waking hours. It makes a certain kind of sense. While you're awake, your brain tends to operate in logical mode. It follows rules, stays grounded in linear thought, and sticks to what's familiar. That's useful for getting through the day, but not always the best mindset for innovation. Creativity thrives on making unexpected connections, seeing things sideways, and letting go of convention. And that's where dreaming comes in. In a dream, the brain is freed from the usual constraints. Logic loosens its grip, timelines dissolve, and you can explore without judgment. People, places, and emotions blend into a surreal mix that often doesn't make sense on paper, but can contain surprising insights. This cognitive free play allows your mind to wander into imaginative territory it might never reach during the grind of daily life. One of the most well-known dream-fueled breakthroughs comes from the world of chemistry. In the mid-19th century, German chemist August Kekulé had been puzzling over the molecular structure of benzene, a compound that didn't seem to fit the standard chain-based models. According to Kekulé's own account, he dozed off in front of the fire and dreamt of a snake biting its own tail. When he woke, he realized the image pointed toward a ring structure. This was a completely new way of thinking about molecular geometry, and it became a foundational idea in organic chemistry. Kekulé wasn't the only one. Elias Howe, who developed the modern lock-stitch sewing machine, reportedly dreamt of cannibals holding spears with holes in the tips, an image that helped him realise that placing the needle's eye at the point rather than the end could solve his mechanical problem. Paul McCartney famously said that the melody for Yesterday came to him in a dream. He woke up with the tune in his head and immediately rushed to the piano to record it, initially convinced that he must have heard it somewhere before. It was entirely original. Mary Shelley, too, described dreaming of a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside a lifeless form, an eerie, atmospheric image that became the seed of Frankenstein. Writers like Stephen King, Edgar Allan Poe, and William Blake have all drawn on dreams for stories, characters, and atmosphere. Surrealist painter Salvador Dalí intentionally disrupted his sleep cycle to catch glimpses of dream imagery, believing it was the truest form of raw, unfiltered creativity. He even used a technique involving a spoon, a plate, and a nap, dozing off in a chair with a spoon in hand so that when he nodded off and dropped spoon, the clatter would wake him up just in time to capture the last flashes of dream content. What makes dreams so helpful for creativity? One reason is the unique pattern of brain activity during REM sleep. While the prefrontal cortex, the hub of logic and critical thinking, is relatively quiet, other areas become hyperactive, especially those linked to emotion, memory, and sensory imagery. This combination makes for a highly associative thinking style. The brain begins to link things that wouldn't normally go together: sounds and colours, past experiences and future plans, faces and places that never met in real life. This can lead to insights that feel like they come from nowhere, because they kind of do. There's also less fear of failure in a dream. You can attempt something wildly unrealistic, sculpting clouds, turning doorways into waterfalls, writing music on fish scales, and your dream self won't blink. That freedom from internal censorship lets your subconscious mind experiment without the usual inhibitions. In this state, your imagination isn't confined by "that won't work" or "that doesn't make sense." It just tries things out. And sometimes those wild experiments plant the seeds of real-world breakthroughs. Creative dreaming doesn't always happen by accident either. Some people actively use dreams as part of their creative process. This can involve keeping a notebook by the bed and writing down dream fragments before they fade, or mentally focusing on a creative problem before falling asleep in hopes that the brain will keep working on it in the background. It's not a guaranteed technique, but many writers, artists, and inventors swear by the power of sleeping on a difficult problem. One famous case comes from Dmitri Mendeleev, the Russian chemist who created the periodic table. After wrestling with how to arrange the elements, he supposedly dreamt of a table where all the elements fell into place based on atomic weight and chemical properties. He wrote it down immediately, and the system not only worked, it predicted the existence of elements that hadn't yet been discovered. Even in less dramatic cases, dreams can bring subtle clarity. Sometimes an idea just feels better after a night's rest. A line of dialogue sounds smoother. A painting's composition feels more balanced. A clunky solution suddenly seems obvious. That's the brain at work, letting connections simmer beneath the surface and presenting the results in strange but useful packages. It's not all lightning bolts and eureka moments, though. Dream-inspired creativity also has a softer side, refining emotional tone, generating metaphor, and exploring the symbolic. Poets have long looked to dreams for imagery and intuition. Painters have used dreamlike logic to break away from realism and explore inner landscapes. And in music, dream states have given rise to melodies, moods, and rhythms that don't necessarily make sense but resonate anyway. It's also worth mentioning that not all creative dreams result in useful or coherent ideas. Sometimes the dream is just weird. A typewriter that types itself in Morse code, a balloon that lectures you about quantum mechanics, a chair that sings sea shanties. Entertaining, but maybe not practical. Still, the process of dreaming trains the brain to explore freely. Even the nonsense dreams may be working out neural pathways, flexing your imagination like a muscle. Interestingly, Research has shown that people who report frequent dreaming also tend to score higher on measures of creativity. They're not necessarily more artistic or original in a formal sense, but they're often more open to new experiences, more comfortable with ambiguity, and better at thinking in metaphor. It's as if regular contact with the dream world makes the mind more flexible, more comfortable with possibility. There's something quietly beautiful about that. Dreaming becomes more than just a side effect of sleep. It becomes part of the creative ecosystem of the mind, a hidden workshop where ideas are formed, broken apart, reassembled, and occasionally delivered with just the right touch of strangeness to feel new. So the next time you wake up with a half-formed idea that came from a dream, even if it doesn't make much sense, write it down. That odd little image might be more meaningful than it first appears, and if not, well, at least your subconscious is getting its reps in. Because dreaming isn't just rest, it's rehearsal. It's risk-free experimentation. It's your brain, off the clock, still scribbling in the margin, still trying new things, still painting in the dark, and every now and then it brings back something brilliant. Dreams have a remarkable way of transcending the private self. Though born in the mind of a single sleeper, they often touch something universal. All across the world and throughout history, human beings have looked at their dreams and seen more than just the random flickers of a tired brain. They've seen messages, warnings, stories, symbols, even pieces of the divine. The meanings may differ, the frameworks may shift, but one thing is consistent: dreams matter. In many indigenous cultures, dreams are not simply personal experiences. They are considered part of a larger spiritual or communal reality. Among the Ojibwe people of North America, dreams are deeply interwoven with the concept of vision quests, periods of fasting and solitude in nature where dreams and visions are sought for guidance, purpose, or identity. These dreams are not dismissed or seen as mere fantasy. They are shared, interpreted, and woven into the life of the community. A powerful dream might be brought before elders, who help the dreamer understand what it means for them and for those around them. The Australian Aboriginal people speak of the dream time, not just a time long ago, but an ongoing, ever-present spiritual dimension. In this worldview, ancestral beings shape the world during dream time, and dreaming connects individuals to that sacred history. Dreams are seen as portals through which people access knowledge, songlines, and spiritual truths. A dream can be a visit from an ancestor, a reminder of responsibilities, or a reaffirmation of identity. It's not separate from waking life, it's simply another layer of it. Across the Pacific in Polynesian cultures such as those of Hawaii and Samoa, dreams are often seen as messages from spirits or ancestors. The dead may appear in dreams to offer comfort, deliver warnings, or answer questions that the living cannot resolve on their own. There's a sense of continued dialogue, of sleep being not an escape from the world, but a bridge to the unseen parts of it. These dreams are discussed openly, sometimes ritually, and respected for what they may contain. In many African cultures, dreams also play a key role in spiritual communication. The Ashanti people of Ghana, for example, traditionally believe that dreams allow the soul to leave the body and travel, either to other realms or to visit loved ones. Dreaming is not just a passive experience, but an active one. The dreamer is doing something, going somewhere, engaging in meaningful exchange. Dream interpretation is often a communal process, and like a good story, a dream may evolve in meaning over time, depending on who tells it and who hears it. Turning to the East, we find different but equally rich perspectives. In traditional Chinese philosophy, dreams are viewed as movements of qi, the life energy, through the mind and body. Dreams may be caused by imbalances or blockages in this flow, and in traditional Chinese medicine, they are sometimes used as diagnostic tools. The ancient text Zhou Li describes how dreams were once categorized and interpreted by royal dream interpreters who would analyze their symbolism and recommend rituals or treatments. Taoist traditions, meanwhile, embrace a kind of dream-based relativism. The famous story of Zhuangzi, a Taoist philosopher, tells of a man who dreamt he was a butterfly, fluttering through the air. When he woke, he wondered, was he Zhuangzi who had dreamt of being a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was Zhuangzi? This playful, gentle uncertainty reflects Taoist ideas about the fluidity of identity and the blurred boundary between waking and dreaming, self and other, reality and illusion. In Indian philosophy, dreams hold varying roles depending on the tradition. In Hindu thought, dreams may reflect karmic impressions or desires from past lives. The Upanishads describe dreaming as one of the three states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, each offering insight into the nature of the self and reality. Yogic and meditative practices sometimes aim to observe the dream state with awareness as part of the broader pursuit of spiritual liberation. In Buddhism, dreams can be both informative and illusory. Tibetan Buddhism, in particular, includes a sophisticated dream yoga practice where dreamers aim to become lucid and use the dream space to deepen their understanding of impermanence and emptiness. In this tradition, mastering dreams isn't about control, but about insight. It's about realizing that both dreams and waking life are constructed by the mind, and learning not to cling too tightly to either. Contrast that with the more secular, often skeptical view found in much of modern Western science. Here, dreams are primarily explored through the lenses of neurology and psychology. The focus is less on symbolism and more on function. How dreams relate to memory, emotion, problem-solving or cognitive maintenance. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, of course, brought dream analysis into the heart of early psychology, with Freud seeing dreams as expressions of repressed desires and Jung viewing them as messages from the unconscious. But by the late 20th century, many scientists had shifted focus to brainwaves and neurotransmitters. Yet even in the West, the pull of dreams remains strong. People still write down their dreams, share them with friends, or turn them into poetry and art. Many dream of deceased loved ones and take comfort in the encounter. Some seek out dream dictionaries, curious about the meaning behind flying, falling, or losing teeth. Others simply enjoy the surreal theatre of it all. The Western view may be more compartmentalized, spiritual here, scientific there, but dreams still carry weight. In many traditional societies, dream sharing is a communal ritual. It might happen around the morning fire, during a meal, or as part of spiritual ceremonies. These moments create space for interpretation, storytelling, and connection. A dream isn't just mine or yours. It's something we bring into the circle, something that reflects not only our individual psyche, but also the concerns, hopes, and patterns of the group. A prophetic dream might influence a decision. A troubling one might prompt support or reflection. In these contexts, dreams are part of how communities think together. Even among modern urban dwellers, there's a quiet version of this. Two people waking up and asking, "Did you dream anything weird last night?" A group chat where someone shares a strange image that popped into their head at 3 a.m. A journal entry capturing a feeling that didn't quite make sense but seemed to matter. Across language, tradition and belief, people keep doing the same thing, noticing their dreams, honouring them, sharing them. And while no single interpretation framework can claim to be correct, what these varied perspectives reveal is a remarkable truth, that dreaming is both deeply personal and profoundly human. Whether seen as prophecy, processing, or play, dreams offer a glimpse into the parts of us that don't always speak in words. They help us rehearse, reflect, imagine, mourn, and explore. They are the private theatre of the mind, yet shaped by the culture in which we live. A Buddhist monk and a Brazilian shaman may experience very different dreams, but they both know, instinctively, that those dreams are meaningful, that they matter. In the quiet hours of sleep, when identity softens and the boundaries of self become more porous, we're all speaking a language older than speech. It's made of images and feelings, symbols and echoes. Whether it's a vision quest, a ghostly visitor, a scientific insight, or just a floating whale in a top hat, each dream is a little offering, a glimpse of what the mind can do when it's left to wander on its own. And across time and culture, people have continued to look at those wanderings not as nonsense but as clues, not as noise but as signal, proof that even in the dark we're still listening. In the quiet flicker of a dream, you find yourself standing on a floating staircase made of moonlight, holding a goldfish that speaks fluent Italian. You're not sure why you're wearing mittens or why your third-grade teacher is now a giant squirrel, but none of it feels out of place. Then you wake up groggy and blinking, the details already slipping through your fingers like mist. Wouldn't it be something if you could just rewind the footage? It's the sort of idea that used to live strictly in the domain of science fiction, technology that can record dreams, replay them, or decode what your sleeping brain was experiencing in high definition. Think headgear that records images directly from your visual cortex, or dream-reading computers that translate brainwaves into little nighttime movies. It all sounds like the plot of a Christopher Nolan film. And yet, science is inching, very slowly, very carefully, toward that surreal possibility. We're not quite Inception ready, but we are definitely peaking. The first thing to understand is that decoding dreams doesn't begin with the dreams themselves. It begins with understanding how the brain processes visual information while awake. This involves mapping what's called the visual cortex, the area at the back of your brain responsible for interpreting what you see. When you look at a tree or a face or a glowing disco pineapple, your brain creates a very specific pattern of activity in this region. These patterns can be measured using functional MR or fMRI for short, which tracks blood flow in the brain to infer which areas are active. In a groundbreaking study from Japan in 2013, researchers at the ATR Computational Neuroscience Laboratories used fMRI to scan participants while they were falling asleep. The volunteers were gently awakened during the early stages of sleep and asked what they had just seen in their dreams. Simple things like a building, a person, or a piece of furniture. After doing this dozens of times with each participant, the researchers began to correlate specific brain activity patterns with recurring dream images. They then used machine learning algorithms to predict what the participant might be dreaming about, based on the real-time fMRI data. The accuracy was far from perfect, but it was better than chance, and for a first attempt at peering into someone else's dream, without relying solely on their verbal report, it was a major milestone. Since then, other research groups have pushed the concept further. Some studies have attempted to reconstruct dream content using increasingly complex AI models trained on both waking and dreaming brain data. These algorithms compare the brain's activity patterns against vast databases of images and try to find matches. The result isn't exactly a dream movie, but more like a rough visual approximation. You might end up with a blurry, abstract version of a face or a house, shadows of the dream world rather than a crystal-clear window. There's also been work on decoding spoken words and inner speech from the dreaming mind. Since language areas of the brain can activate during dreams, some researchers have wondered whether it might be possible to pick up on internal dialogue, not just what you're seeing in a dream, but what you're hearing or thinking. Early efforts are in motion, but we're still very much in the early, fumbling stages. It's like trying to decode poetry from a radio signal beamed through a fog machine. Interestingly, one of the challenges in recording dreams is that they don't follow the same logic or structure as waking life. Dreams don't play out like videos on a timeline. They jump, they morph, they double back. A person can turn into a dog mid-sentence. A room can become an ocean without warning. From a brain-reading perspective, this makes things a little tricky. You're not just trying to record images, you're trying to make sense of a narrative that doesn't always follow the rules of storytelling, or physics, or grammar. Still, the tools are improving. Some researchers are now experimenting with brain-computer interfaces that aim to pick up even more detailed data from brainwaves during sleep, using technologies like EEG and near-infrared spectroscopy. Others are looking at wearable devices that might one day provide dream monitoring features outside the lab. The idea of a dream recording headband isn't completely out of reach. though it might not come with Dolby surround sound just yet. But as we tiptoe into this strange frontier, big questions start to emerge. If we could one day fully record dreams, who would own that data? Would it be considered private, like a diary, or could it be stored, shared, even analysed without your consent? Could dreams be used in therapy, or more uncomfortably in advertising, interrogation, or surveillance? These are not problems we need to solve immediately, but they are lingering at the edges of progress. There's also the philosophical dilemma. Would watching a dream from the outside really capture its essence? A dream isn't just what you see, it's what you feel. The fear of running, the joy of flying, the confusion of suddenly being underwater in a library with no books. Can an algorithm ever capture that emotional texture? Or would dream recordings be hollow echoes stripped of their surreal magic? For now, the science is still rooted in caution. Most current dream decoding research takes place in controlled lab settings, with small groups of participants and simple dream content. We're not yet at the point where you can plug your brain into a dream recorder and wake up with a replay on your phone. But the fact that researchers are beginning to read even fragments of dream content, actual visual approximations of what someone might be dreaming, is a huge leap from where we were just a decade ago. It's the kind of progress that feels both wondrous and slightly eerie, like discovering you can listen to the wind and sometimes, just faintly, hear it humming a tune. It's not a symphony yet, but the instruments are warming up, and it's worth noting that even if dream recording technology never becomes perfect or mainstream, it still teaches us something profound, that the brain is more readable than we once believed, that the architecture of a dream, its shapes, its colours, its rhythms, leaves real, measurable footprints in the brain. We may never fully capture the depth of dreaming on a screen, but even brushing against it reveals how much of our mind still remains a mystery, waiting patiently to be explored. In the end, perhaps it's enough to know that science is trying, that we're peeking into the dream world not just to control it, but to understand it, to trace the outlines of that glowing staircase, the Italian-speaking goldfish, the places we visit in sleep that don't exist anywhere else. And if one day we do find a way to hit play on our dreams, maybe we'll see them not just as strange recordings of the night, but as deeply human, deeply curious reflections of who we are when no one else is watching. For something that feels so ephemeral, dreaming plays a surprisingly serious role in your well-being. Most of us take it for granted that every night, when we tumble into sleep, our minds will eventually drift into dream territory. We don't plan it, we don't schedule it. It just happens. But what if it doesn't? What if your nights become a blank slate, or your dreams shrink to a whisper and fade before you can catch them? While it's hard to say for sure if someone never dreams at all, since most people simply don't remember most of their dreams, scientists have found that in certain cases dreaming can be significantly reduced or even suppressed, and when that happens, the consequences can ripple into your waking life in some surprising ways. At the heart of this issue is REM sleep, the phase of the sleep cycle most closely associated with dreaming. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and it's a stage where brain activity looks surprisingly similar to that of a waking brain. Your eyes flicker beneath closed lids, your muscles stay mostly paralysed, and your brain throws on its internal theatre, projecting strange, vivid stories without your permission. But REM sleep isn't just for entertainment. It's also deeply tied to emotional regulation, memory consolidation, and mental restoration. If you miss out on it, your mind tends to feel it. And there are several ways REM can be disrupted. One of the most common culprits is sleep deprivation. When you're not getting enough sleep overall, you end up with shorter or less complete sleep cycles. Since REM occurs in longer stretches later in the night, cutting your sleep short can essentially chop off your dream time. If you're only getting 5 hours of sleep, your brain may never get the chance to dive into the deep end of REM. You wake up, groggy and dreamless, with your mental inbox still full. Then there's medication. Certain classes of drugs, including antidepressants, antipsychotics, and beta blockers, are known to suppress REM sleep. These medications often work by altering neurotransmitters like serotonin or norepinephrine, which are deeply involved in the sleep cycle. People on these medications may notice that they don't recall their dreams as often, or that their dreams feel muted or less vivid. It's not always a problem, especially if the medication is helping with more pressing mental health needs. But it does highlight how sensitive dreaming is to changes in brain chemistry. Alcohol is another REM thief. While it might help you fall asleep faster, alcohol disrupts the architecture of sleep, particularly the REM stages. You may conk out quickly after a few drinks, but you're more likely to wake up in the middle of the night and less likely to get the kind of dreaming sleep that leaves you feeling mentally refreshed. The result? You wake up foggy, emotionally out of sync, and possibly wondering why your dreams seem to have taken the night off. Sleep disorders also play a role. Conditions like insomnia, sleep apnea, and narcolepsy can all interfere with the normal flow of the sleep cycle. In sleep apnea, for example, the airway becomes blocked during sleep, causing frequent micro-awakenings that may prevent the brain from reaching or sustaining REM. People with untreated apnea often report poor dream recall, not necessarily because they aren't dreaming, but because their REM sleep is fragmented or too brief to produce vivid experiences. So what happens when dreams go missing? Studies suggest that dream loss, or more accurately REM sleep loss, can lead to increased irritability, poor concentration, and difficulty managing emotions. There's even evidence that REM-deprived individuals show heightened reactivity to negative stimuli. That spilled coffee feels like a personal attack. That snide comment from your coworker, an emotional gut punch. Without the emotional housekeeping that dreams help facilitate, your brain becomes a bit like an unwashed teacup. Residues of stress and tension cling longer than they should. Memory can also suffer. REM sleep is involved in the integration of new information, especially emotional or autobiographical memories. When you skip out on dreaming, your ability to learn, retain, and connect ideas may become dulled. You might feel like you're thinking through molasses, or like everything you learned yesterday has already packed its bags and left town. But here's the fascinating part. Your brain tries to make up for it. When you've been deprived of REM sleep, whether from stress, late nights, or medication, your brain often rebounds. On the next night of decent rest, it dives head first into REM, often earlier and more intensely than usual. This phenomenon is known as REM rebound. It's as if your brain says, right, enough of that nonsense, we've got emotional filing to catch up on, and floods your night with dreams. During REM rebound, dreams can feel more vivid, more intense, even chaotic. People often report strange or unusually emotional dreams after several nights of poor sleep. It's your brain trying to restore balance. And while these rebound dreams might not be the calmest ride, they serve an important purpose. In extreme cases, chronic REM suppression may even correlate with long-term mental health challenges. Some researchers have observed that people with depression or anxiety disorders often have disturbed REM patterns, either too little, too much, or oddly timed. While it's still unclear whether disrupted dreaming causes these issues or is simply a symptom, the connection is strong enough to suggest that dreams are more than just passive entertainment. Of course, it's also important to acknowledge that dream recall varies widely from person to person. Some people rarely remember their dreams, but are still getting healthy REM sleep. Others recall vivid scenes every night. What matters more than whether you remember your dreams is whether your brain is getting the full, balanced cycle of sleep stages, including plenty of REM. There are gentle ways to encourage dream recall if you're curious. Keeping a notebook by the bed and jotting down whatever fragments you remember upon waking, even just feelings or images, can help train the brain to pay attention. Avoiding alcohol and screens before bed, maintaining a regular sleep schedule, and creating a peaceful wind-down routine can also support deeper, more restorative sleep. But if you're not remembering your dreams right now, don't panic. It doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong. Dreams are elusive by nature, and they often vanish before we can grab hold of them. Still, it's worth noting when they go quiet, especially if it coincides with other signs of poor sleep stress or emotional imbalance. Because when your brain stops dreaming regularly, it's not just skipping the surreal bits, it might be missing out on essential processing, memory work, and emotional restoration. Dreaming is one of the mind's quiet maintenance routines, a kind of psychological housekeeping we rarely notice until it's skipped. So the next time you wake up feeling unusually edgy, foggy, or unsettled, consider this. Maybe your brain skipped its night shift. Maybe the dream crew took the night off, but with a little care and patience, they'll clock back in. And when they do, they'll have plenty of catching up to do. It's a quiet night. Somewhere in a living room, a dog lies on its side, legs twitching slightly, nose wrinkling as if chasing something in the distance. Its paws paddle in the air, its breathing deepens, and its tail gives a gentle wag. No tennis ball in sight, no open field, but clearly the chase is on. And it makes you wonder, what is that dog seeing? Is it bounding through dream grass? Does it remember a favourite park or a squirrel that got away? We know that humans dream, but what about animals? Do they slip into dream worlds too? Do cats curl up not just on your blanket, but also in some imagined sunbeam inside their minds? Does a rat revisit the twists and turns of a maze as it sleeps? And what, if anything, does a whale dream beneath the waves? Let's begin with what we can measure, our EM sleep. Scientists have known for decades that many mammals experience REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, just like humans do. During REM, the brain is highly active, the body often remains still due to temporary muscle paralysis, and in humans, this is when vivid dreaming occurs. So when researchers noticed that animals also pass through REM cycles, they began to wonder, are they dreaming too? Take rats, for instance. In a famous experiment at MIT, scientists trained rats to navigate mazes while measuring patterns of electrical activity in their hippocampus, the part of the brain involved in memory. Later, while the rats were asleep, researchers continued monitoring their brain activity and found something fascinating. The same sequences of neural firing that occurred during the maze running were repeating during sleep, especially during REM stages. In other words, the rats were replaying their daily experiences in their dreams, retracing paths as if mentally running through the maze again. And it wasn't just random firing. The sequences were so specific that researchers could often tell exactly where in the maze the rat had been, based solely on the sleeping brain activity. This suggested that, just like humans, rats were dreaming of their waking life, reliving their day as a kind of mental rehearsal or review. Dogs and cats offer even more visible hints. If you've ever had a pet, you've probably seen the twitching paws, flicking ears, soft whimpers, or the occasional sleepy bark or meow. These are especially common during REM sleep and are believed to be physical echoes of dream content. A study by Matthew Wilson and Kenway Louie even found that certain patterns of movement in cats, like batting paws, corresponded with dream states during REM. Dogs have been filmed during sleep demonstrating behaviours that closely resemble chasing, playing or running, though they remain mostly motionless, thanks to REM paralysis. It's as if their minds are fully alive and immersed in a different world, while their bodies stay grounded in this one. One theory holds that animals dream about things important to their survival: hunting, exploring, bonding, even problem-solving. Their dreams may not be made of words, but of actions, instincts, and emotions. Birds, too, appear to dream. Zebra finches, for example, have been studied for their vocal learning abilities. These small birds learn songs from adult tutors and practice their tunes repeatedly, both while awake and asleep. Researchers discovered that during sleep the same neural circuits used in song production fired in the same rhythm, suggesting the birds were rehearsing their songs in dreams. It's as if a young finch, nestled in its perch, hums silently to itself in the dark, practicing its melody for the morning chorus. The presence of dreaming isn't limited to land or air. The oceans have their dreamers too. Octopuses, for example, have captivated scientists with their astonishing intelligence and their mysterious sleep behaviours. In recent studies, researchers have observed octopuses going through two distinct sleep stages: quiet sleep and an active sleep phase that shares features with REM. During this active sleep, the octopus's body changes colour, their skin flashes with chromatophore patterns, and their arms occasionally twitch. What's more, these colour changes often resemble the camouflage patterns they use while awake, patterns for hunting, hiding, or displaying emotion. It's entirely speculative, but some scientists suggest that this could be the octopus replaying recent experiences, practicing behaviours, or navigating scenarios in its own curious way. If octopuses are dreaming, they may be among the only invertebrates to do so. And it invites a cascade of questions. If dreaming is widespread in mammals, birds, and perhaps even cephalopods, what does that say about its role in life? Is dreaming an evolutionary advantage, a shared toolkit of consciousness? Or is it just an accidental side effect of a busy brain reorganizing itself? There's a larger question tucked inside this one too. Are animals aware of their dreams? Do they experience them as narratives like we do? Do they wake up and feel confused or startled, or content without knowing why? It's difficult to say. Self-awareness in animals is still a hot topic in neuroscience, and while some animals, like elephants, magpies and dolphins, show signs of self-recognition and complex social behaviour, the inner workings of their dream lives remain a mystery. Still, the idea that animals dream isn't just comforting, it's unifying. It reminds us that the world of sleep isn't divided between humans and everything else, but shared across species in quiet, beautiful ways. It's the collective darkness we retreat to when the day ends, and within that darkness the brain, whether it's wrinkled like ours or smooth like a bird's, lights up with memories, instincts, hopes, and perhaps a little bit of imagination. What's more, dreaming may serve similar functions across species. In humans, REM sleep is linked to emotional processing, memory consolidation, and creativity. Many scientists believe this holds true for animals as well. Dreams may help them remember where food was found, practice avoiding danger, or even solidify new skills. A bird perfecting its song, a cat learning to stalk, a rat navigating a maze, each may be refining itself while it sleeps. There's something profoundly poetic in that idea, that as the stars rise and the world quiets, a forest full of foxes, owls, mice and badgers settle into their burrows and nests, drifting off into private dreams we'll never fully know. That in the sea, a dolphin may dream of leaping through the surf, that in the jungle, a baby monkey may dream of its mother's warmth, that far beneath the waves, a whale closes one eye and dreams in slow, rumbling tones, of deep blue corridors and songs carried across oceans. We may never know exactly what those dreams contain, but the evidence suggests they are there, hidden in the gentle twitch of a paw, the shimmer of octopus skin, the whisper of neurons firing in the dark. Dreaming, it seems, is not a luxury of language, but a whisper of life itself, a nightly rhythm played out in brains large and small, and in that quiet place where instinct meets mystery, where memory dances with imagination, perhaps we all dream together. It's strange, isn't it? How something that takes up so much of our lives can still feel like a secret. We spend nearly a third of our existence asleep, and for many of those hours, our minds are weaving stories, painting scenes, conjuring up people we've never met and places we've never been. Dreams emerge from inside us, but often feel like they come from somewhere else entirely. Mysterious, personal, familiar, and alien at once. And yet science, with all its brilliance and curiosity, has made real strides in understanding them. We know that dreams are linked to memory processing, emotional regulation, brain activity in REM sleep, and the biological machinery of the mind. We can measure the brain waves. We can point to the limbic system lighting up. We can even predict the likelihood of a dream based on a person's sleep cycle. But despite all this, there's still a persistent and poetic question hovering just out of reach. Do dreams mean anything? Are they symbolic messages from the unconscious, or are they just the side effects of a brain-cleaning house? Are they riddles from the soul, or just static from the signal? Philosophers have debated the meaning of dreams for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians believed that dreams were divine communications, often delivered by gods or ancestors. The Greeks toyed with similar ideas, building temples where people could go to sleep and receive prophetic dreams. And even now, in our modern science-laden age, many still hold tightly to the idea that dreams carry meaning, messages tucked inside metaphors waiting to be understood. Then came Freud, who famously called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. He believed that dreams revealed hidden desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts, a coded language from the psyche. Jung added his own layer, suggesting that dreams were expressions of the collective unconscious, rich in archetypes and spiritual depth. Science, of course, offers a different lens. To the cognitive neuroscientist, dreams are mostly the result of neural activity during REM sleep, filtered through your memories, emotions, and sensory experiences. They're not so much encrypted secrets as they are the brain doing what it does best, sorting, adapting, imagining, sometimes chaotic, sometimes useful, often just strange. But here's the catch. Even if dreams are just mechanics, even if they're simply the result of random brain activation or emotional calibration, that doesn't mean they're meaningless. A rainbow is a product of light refraction, but that doesn't make it any less beautiful. A song is just vibrating air, but it can still make you cry. Meaning doesn't always come from purpose. Sometimes it comes from experience, and dreaming is, above all, an experience. One that is often emotional, immersive, and unforgettable. A dream might not be a message, but it feels like one. And that feeling, the way a dream can linger in your chest long after the images have faded, gives it a kind of meaning that science can't quantify. There's something very human about that. We are, after all, creatures of story. We find narrative in the stars, in tea leaves, in coincidence. Dreams offer a private theatre where the mind tells itself stories without the burden of fact or time or gravity. They are fluid, expressive, and sometimes terrifying, but they are also deeply intimate. No one else dreams quite like you. In that sense, dreams may be less about what they mean in a strict analytical sense, and more about what they are, a nightly reflection of the self, built from the scattered bricks of thought, memory, and feeling. Consider how many times a dream has made you feel something real, the sinking sadness of losing someone all over again, the exhilaration of flying above rooftops, the quiet strangeness of speaking to someone you love in a place that doesn't exist. These moments may not have messages attached, but they matter. They stir something. They reflect parts of you that the daylight tends to smooth over. Some researchers have described dreams as overnight therapy, where the brain rehearses emotional responses in a low-stakes setting. Others see dreams as creative simulations, allowing us to explore impossible situations or process unsolved problems. In either case, dreaming is not a wasteful quirk of the brain. It's an active, meaningful function, even if we don't fully understand its script. And maybe that's part of the beauty, that dreams still resist our full grasp. In an age when so much of the world has been mapped, scanned, or simulated, dreams remain one of the last wild frontiers. We can measure their shadows, but we still can't hold them. We can describe them, but never fully explain them. They're slippery, like water through fingers, and perhaps that's exactly how they're meant to be. Because in some strange way, dreams remind us that not everything has to be solved to be understood. Some things are meant to be felt, wondered about, treasured in fragments. Dreams exist in a twilight zone between what we know and what we believe, between neuron and nostalgia, between the science of the brain and the poetry of the heart. They are mechanical, yes, but they are also magical. Not in the wand-waving sense, but in the quiet alchemy of the inner life. A dream might be a leftover echo of something you saw last week. It might be your brain reorganizing emotions or stitching memories together. Or it might be something more, something we don't yet have the tools to measure. Maybe a dream is the mind's way of looking at itself. Maybe it's the soul putting on a play. Or maybe, like a painting or a melody, it simply is, not there to be decoded, but to be experienced. Whatever dreams are, they are yours, unique to your mind, your memories, your feelings. They are stitched from your joys and your fears, your thoughts and your puzzles. They belong to no one else, and that alone makes them meaningful. So sleep deeply, dream freely, and wander gently through that strange and wonderful place where logic takes a back seat and imagination steers the wheel. You don't need to understand every detail. You don't need to find the message. It's enough just to be there, to float, to feel, to dream. Thank you for listening. Whether you're curled up under blankets in London, swaying gently in a hammock in Bali, or letting this play while the stars rise outside your window. Wherever you are, I hope this journey through the world of dreams has brought you a bit of quiet wonder, or at the very least a gentle nudge towards sleep. At the start of this video I asked where in the world you were watching from, and perhaps more quietly I also asked, what is your brain really doing while you sleep? Why do we dream at all? Is it science? Is it mystery? Or maybe a little of both? Now, with all we've explored, we may not have arrived at one final neat answer, but perhaps that's not the point. Dreams are not puzzles to be solved. They are not problems to fix or wild creatures to cage. They are passing shadows of our inner world, glowing briefly in the dark, shaped by memory, emotion, and imagination. Sometimes they're nonsensical, sometimes profound, and sometimes they're just odd. But they are always yours, handcrafted by the same brain that navigates your day, solves your problems, holds your secrets, and learns from every joy and every mistake. You don't need to chase your dreams, in the literal sense at least. They'll come to you, quietly when the world goes still. They don't ask for interpretation, only presence, a little space to unfurl. Some nights they may sweep you into strange galaxies or bring back voices you miss. Other nights they may stay just out of reach, dissolving before you open your eyes. Both are part of the experience. So sleep gently tonight. Let your mind wander without maps, without pressure. Let the brain do what it has done for thousands of years. Sort, soothe, imagine, restore. You don't have to understand the entire script. Just give it a stage and a little darkness. Thank you again for joining me here on The Sleepy Scientist. If you're still awake, impressive stamina, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And to those of you who already have, thank you. I'm grateful to be part of your wind-down ritual. Now let go of the day, let your thoughts drift. Tonight let your brain take the reins. You're in good hands, even if they're your own. Sweet dreams.